Another film that Kenneth Branagh does not appear as a Russian in would be Spider-Man, I assume. I've not seen this one, but I'm just going to go out on a limb and guess.
No, although before I watched this, I did go back and watch a couple of the films that sort of tie into this, including The Amazing Spider-Man 2, where Paul Giamatti does play a Russian, and
well,
that's not good.
No.
Talking of which, I went back and I watched Spider-Man 3, which I hadn't seen in ages and remember very little of, and then the two Andrew Garfield films. The first one, I remember at the time, you and I both thinking, because we talked about it on our previous podcast, thinking that it was sort of kind of largely comparable to the first Sam Raimi film. I don't feel quite like that anymore, but it's still pretty decent. The second one, oh my God, that's a terrible film.
Yeah.
I was much more forgiving of it when we spoke about that before. I watched Amazing Spider-Man 2 and I hated it. This is terrible and it makes no sense, and the retcon stuff, the characters are terrible, like why doesn't this work? And then I looked up the screenwriter and it was Roberto Orci and Alex Kurtzman. Well, that explains everything, because Alex Kurtzman is the worst. But before I go on yet another rant about Alex Kurtzman, which I want to do, but I won't, I will talk about Spider-Man instead. Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web, any size, catches thieves, just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen, bud, he's got radioactive blood. Can he cut the running time? No, he can't. Unnecessarily long durations are partly enshrined in law now or something. That needs some work because it doesn't scan. Hey there goes the Spider-Man. Yes, I'm beating that drum again. I'll stop when the problem does. So another Spider-Man film is with us, which picks up where Spider-Man Far From Home left off, with J.K. Simmons, J. Jonah Jameson, now a full-on Alex Jones analogue, telling the world that Spidey killed Mysterio and that his identity is that of New York teenager Peter Parker. This sees Peter's life made a little complicated, not just because of the lack of privacy he now has, but because a substantial number of people believe him to be a murderer. Though this seems to mostly manifest in someone throwing some paint on him and... He, MJ and Ned all get arrested, but Daredevil turns up in his lawyer role and largely waves it all away, so that's convenient. The one place that it does affect him, though, is university applications, and he, MJ and Ned all fail to get in anywhere they applied, including their preference of MIT, because of their association with Spider-Man. Peter, who the film almost goes to pains to show is a Tony Stark-like scientific super genius and clearly needs to learn nothing at university, is upset, but that's especially for his friends. And he does what anybody in this situation would do and seeks out a wizard to cast a spell for him. Because, if you remember, wizards are a thing here. Taking pity on Peter, Doctor Strange casts a spell so that the world will forget Spider-Man's identity. But his irritation with and distraction by Peter's many caveats and last-minute changes means he wizards wrong, and a hole is ripped in the multiverse, resulting in several villains who died fighting Spider-Man in previous films coming to this universe. More will likely follow, and the whole world is in peril again, which seems entirely reasonable stakes for a film about an acrobatic teenager in a lycra suit. These villains are Dr. Octopus, the Green Goblin, Electro, Sandman, and the Lizard, all played by the same actors as in their previous big screen outings, to varying degrees of success. Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe come out the best by far, managing to be both sinister and sympathetic. Rhys Ifans is a giant lizard, and fortunately not much seen, which is all for the best, though when he is seen, the creature design doesn't look quite as ridiculous as it did in 2012. And Thomas Hayden Church's performance doesn't go much beyond introducing himself to Spider-Man with, "It's me, remember, Flint Marko," as if Spider-Man might forget and confuse him with some other giant sand monster. Electro, a terrible villain in 2014, is also terrible here, and also not at all the same character, because here Jamie Foxx is playing the role in a way that seems very Jamie Foxx, suggesting the tiresome presence of an actor's ego in contract discussions. The wizard fella tasks Spidey with rounding up and dispatching these bad guys, but Spidey, being a kind and sensitive chap, decides he should help them all first instead. So uses his super brain and some handy Stark magical MacGuffin tech, along with some unexpected multi-armed assistance to cure them all, before sending them back to universes where they're all already dead. I suppose it's the thought that counts. Some people just don't want to be helped, though, having fully embraced their villainy. But damn it, Spider-Man's decided he's going to cure them, and cure them he will, whether they want it or not. This film not exactly sending the best message with self-acceptance and autonomy. This disagreement naturally leads to conflict, and it seems Spidey may be outmatched, but fortunately it wasn't just bad guys who came through the big reality hole. The excessive running time I mentioned in my introduction wasn't as noticeable here as in many other films, perhaps because most of Spider-Man No Way Home's flab lies in the middle and the pace and enjoyment picks up considerably by the end, especially after the arrival of additional Spider-Men. But it's still annoying and continues to make me feel like editors no longer have any respect in Hollywood, or at least that their profession and purpose does not. The film could certainly do with any scene involving Jon Favreau's Happy Hogan being cut, plus all of the attempts at comedy rather than wit and humour, especially when at other times beloved characters are genuinely imperiled. However, it's still an enjoyable film and a reasonable amount above the general baseline competency that most of the films in the MCU achieve, but it's very much the least of the three Tom Holland Spider-Man films thus far, and may also be the last. As usual with these films, an advisory not to think too hard about it if you're capable of such things, though here it's mostly just in the denouement where things don't make a heap of sense. And if you've not seen this yet but intend to, a quick PSA. There's a mid-credit scene that's worth staying a couple of minutes to watch, but the post-credit scene is literally just a trailer for the next Doctor Strange film. So do what Marvel can, or will not, and respect your time by skipping that.
I will probably still get to this because it sounds like a goddamned mess. And there's nothing I like more than a goddamned mess on screen. But yeah, I wish it was a bit shorter by the sounds of it. I'm sure I'll have the same complaint as you do because, yes, very much a running theme around these parts and Marvel in particular. So
yeah, again, I just want to make it clear, I have nothing against long films. I think the best film ever made is Lawrence of Arabia, and that's a film where the word epic is actually appropriate in every way. It's films that are unnecessarily long.
Yeah.
And I don't understand this. There doesn't need to be any editing going on anymore. Like, directors have too much control over that when it's not their strength.
Yeah.
I don't know where the trend has come from.
Well, the whole Marvel thing in particular, I don't know how much any director's got any sway with Marvel at all. That seems to be a studio that has some kind of MO of just wanting long run times to fill up presumably streaming services or keeping cinemas engaged. I don't know quite what the deal is, but yeah, they have for a long time not had any respect for our time. So yes.
So if directors have no power, then editors certainly don't.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. I mean, it's been a while now. It's certainly well more than a decade. If you look at something like Bridesmaids, which was 2012, which really good film, but it's a comedy that's 2 hours long. No comedy needs to be 2 hours long.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's, I don't know, people are just too fond of the material and they're not heeding the great advice of kill your darlings.
Yeah, yeah.
And it seems to be more and more prevalent. It just annoys me, especially when something is good and it's made less good by being too long. It's like you don't always want more of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's not a drum we're going to stop buying anytime soon because it doesn't look like the trend is going to stop anytime soon.
Yes.